our service at UHS has become regional. So we serve the southern tier. And while this project we think is tremendous for Johnson City and really is a strong linkage to the university with their School of Pharmacy that's been built the past couple of years, and the School of Nursing that's coming over in the next year, great for Johnson City, but our healthcare service is regional, and that's really what this project is all about, is providing better service for our community. When did planning for this project, not just the expansion component, but also the plans for renovating the Wilson Hospital, Wilson Medical Center campus? Well, we started thinking about it a couple of years ago. We put some really important facilities in Vestal over the past several years on the outpatient side. And we've known for quite some time that our Wilson Emergency Department and Trauma Service was undersized and not serving our community as well as it should be. And we also have known for a number of years that our patients are demanding a private room space on the inpatient side. So when we put those factors together and our significant presence in Johnson City, which has been there for many, many years, it was just a very logical type of thing to plan for an expansion and a renovation. So we're thrilled. It's been several years in the making. And I would say mostly over the past 14 to 15 months, it's really become very focused at the Wilson Medical Center. The reality with healthcare in New York State is that nothing of substance can get done without receiving regulatory approvals. Nothing of any magnitude is going to go forward without cooperation, especially of regulators in Albany. And I'm sure you ultimately had to take that into account when you submitted your application, because obviously if you can't demonstrate a real need for a project of this size, a certificate of need is not going to be approved. That's correct. Healthcare in New York State is highly regulated, and we've been working closely with the New York State Department of Health for a number of years, talking about the need for this project. And once we got board approval to proceed, the UHS board, we filed our certificate of need back in November, just November of 2019, and we got approval on February 6th, which is, for us, for UHS, record time, and maybe record time in the state of New York as well to get an approval. Were you shocked by getting that approval just a couple of weeks ago, or did you have some indication from folks in Albany that, because obviously you I'm sure kept them in the loop before the formal application was put in, so was it shocking that they acted so expeditiously? Well, not shocking that they understood the need, and they understood, how important it is for our community to have a better emergency department, a better trauma service, and more private rooms for our patients. But definitely shocked that the process went so quickly. Me and my team made numerous trips to Albany to make sure the folks understood what we were trying to do. We got a lot of community support from everyone from Donna Lepardo to Fred Akshar to Jason Garner to Mayor Ademi in Johnson City. Lots of folks we briefed on the project and really got behind it. So that made a difference. But yes, getting a 3-month approval from start to finish was shocking, because we had built in many, many more months into the timeline. So now we're somewhat accelerated, which is good. And the fact is, when you talk about any project that entails a significant amount of construction, time is of the essence. Every day or week or month delay, obviously construction costs rarely, if ever, go down. So the sooner that work can commence, the more reasonable the total price of the project is going to be. That's true, and we think we can break ground in about 7 months. We have more design work to do. We have more planning to do. But we also think it's very fortuitous as we go to the tax-exempt bond market. And interest rates are at a historic low. So as we borrow money, we can save money if we can strike while the iron's hot. And I understand there's hope that you can go out as soon as April. Is that the current hope that's what we're shooting for. We're working with rating agencies right now to get a credit rating for UHS. We've never had the opportunity to do that. We just had a meeting with a group yesterday and told our story, told about the project, told about our strategy, told about our presence in the community, and how essential we think we are for the community. So we're looking for an investment grade rating, and if all that comes together nicely with final board approval from UHS, we hope to be in the market sooner than later. Those interest rates are really attractive right now.
Tell our listeners a bit about the project.
Sure.
We've reported on some components, but there are a lot of moving parts involved.
Yeah, very significant project. We want to expand the trauma service and the emergency department, going from 27 beds to 49 beds. It's about 2.5 times the size of what we have now, so lots of square footage. Anyone who's been in the Wilson ED recently, as a patient or a visitor or a family friend, knows it's crowded and at times overcrowded. So that was our primary purpose. We also know that the need and the desire of patients to have private rooms is really important, not just from the privacy perspective, which is very important, of course, but from the quality of care perspective, less infection problems, more ability for the clinical team to interact with the patient the right way, more private communication, things like that. The technology aspects of what healthcare is now is overwhelming at times for patients. So we want to make sure they have space in their room, if they're in the bed, where we can really serve them the best way. We also want to have a front door on Main Street in Johnson City. We've got 3 or 4 streets that bisect our Wilson Medical Center campus. It's become very difficult to gain access to Wilson at times. So having a new front door facing Main Street, a new lobby where everyone can be brought to one access point is really going to be good for us. We also need a new MRI. We don't have one in the hospital. We have to transport patients across the street on Harrison Street. So having that type of imaging service for our patients is really important. And then we probably can't do everything all at once, so we're creating some shell space as part of this 6-story tower, and then we will complete those floors and create even more private rooms over the next several years. So a very exciting project and something we're very anxious to get started with.
There already has been a fair amount of work being done at the Johnson City site over the last couple of years. Of course, over the last several months, people saw changes with the removal of, I think it was about 2/3 of the Pachano building.
Yeah.
And that's now been completed. I believe officially the new gateway has now been occupied officially for a little over a week, although people had already started to move in.
Yeah. Thanks for noticing that. Thanks for talking about that. I'll spend a few minutes on that. Our Pachano building was very old and was not serving as well. And, we had a few problems several years ago, and we had to get out of that building. And, we've been planning and thinking about how to preserve the best parts of that building, namely the bridge that goes across Baldwin Street, the tunnel that goes under Baldwin Street where supplies are transported each day. And we have a helipad that we need to, keep getting patients to. And one of the things on the new building, by the way, is that the helipad will be on the roof, and so it'll be a much quicker transport, saving 7, 8, 9 minutes each time that helicopter lands. But the Gateway building, about 80% of the Pachano building is gone, by the way, so the Gateway building is there between Arch and Baldwin. We have a new parking lot we put in where the building was demolished. But we reconstituted our food service, so we have a kitchen now on the Wilson campus. We were 3.5 years without that. Very expensive and very inefficient.
So food was being transferred, from General?
Yes, we were cooking everything at Binghamton General and transporting, which was not the most efficient.
Seems like a logistical challenge, to
say the least. Yeah, it was more of a logistical nightmare, actually. But our kitchen is now open. We started a week ago Tuesday. Our dining service is open. Our Gateway Market, where folks can buy their food. We have offices that started being populated there back on January 20th. Lots of meeting rooms, lots of administrative space. So repurposing a building like that and kind of sawing off 80% of it was something we've never done, and many of the contractors and folks we worked with locally had never done anything like that. So we were very pleased, very good project, no issues, real focus on safety, and pleased that we're calling it Gateway because it's the gateway to the future for us. It's the first step in our facility master planning process for the Wilson campus.
Speaking with John Carrigg, President and CEO of United Health Services, the challenge that I hear very often for people who are visiting patients at Wilson, or in some cases they may be in for appointments briefly, and it comes down to parking. And actually for decades, that's always been something of a challenge. I think back even when I was a child, if we were visiting there, parking never was exactly easy given the makeup and the location in that part of Johnson City. Going forward, is there a plan perhaps for additional parking facilities, a parking garage or something similar, either done by UHS or something in conjunction with Johnson City?
Yes, parking is definitely a need. We recognize it. We have a very active valet parking service at Wilson. I'm not sure exactly how many cars we valet parked last year, but it was probably more than 50,000 cars, all of them done, by the way, free of charge. You can't see a free valet service anywhere. You can't find one anywhere. But it's something we're very proud of. But clearly, even with the 11 acres we've got in the Johnson City neighborhoods there, with lots of surface lots, very likely we will have to build a multi-story parking garage going forward. It's not exactly part of the plan right now, but it very likely will be going forward.
Well, given not just what you've outlined for the renovations and expansion at Wilson Medical Center, but with the work that continues along what I call the Corliss Avenue corridor with Binghamton University, with the pharmacy school that's now open, the nursing school that probably will be locating there in January, and also a new research and development building that is to be constructed, along with the Lord's Hospital, the family and senior clinic that will be built on Jennison Avenue coming forward. With all that going on in that part of Johnson City, one can only expect more people as far as patients, employees, and ultimately, I would think for Johnson City, additional businesses, too, that will be springing up around this portion of the village.
Sure. You know, we saw what happened downtown in Binghamton from the university. We saw housing, we saw shops, restaurants, bars. I think the same thing will happen in Johnson City. We are very committed to working closely with Binghamton, with the university. When we think about pharmacy students and nursing students eventually being there, all the classes there, there'll be 1,200 students in our neighborhood, and then additional hundreds of faculty, staff, and other folks. So we are thrilled that the university has come to our neighborhood, and this is part of our effort to make all of Johnson City better.
And it also is important to point out, United Health Services is a major employer in the Southern Tier.
We are a major employer. We are, in fact, the largest employer. We have close to 6,500 employees now. It really is significant. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of payroll and benefits that we supply. You know, we've become an economic engine. So we know that, you know, healthcare and education are critical for a community. That's why this partnership with the university is so important for us. But yes, we've become, maybe unfortunately, the largest employer in the Southern Tier.
A lot of that is demographics. We look at an aging population, and ultimately each of us is going to need care as we live longer and with the use of technology. One thing that we didn't touch on about the expansion and renovation is the ability to recruit medical providers, professionals who are in high demand, not just in New York State, but around the country, around the world. A lot of the youngest professionals, after they get out of med school, they can basically write their own ticket depending on what their preference is. If they want to specialize or if they want to do more general, be a general practitioner or whatever. So in terms of trying to find people who are willing to start their careers here and perhaps start families here in the Southern Tier, that too is a critical factor of life.
Absolutely. We think that having modernized facilities, state-of-the-art clinical care will make a huge difference in attracting people to our region. And, we have residency programs now in primary care, in cardiology, a fellowship in cardiology, a fellowship in GI, and we've been able to attract very high-quality practitioners, but we need to keep doing more of that. We need to keep attracting nurses. That linkage to the University School of Nursing, School of Pharmacy is very important from a UHS recruitment perspective, to bring those clinical professionals into our system, have them stay in our community, as you said, Bob, start families, buy houses, and be part of our economy. That's really important, and we think this project will take us there even more so.
Were there any key elements of the proposed project that ultimately weren't included that you had hoped initially? Because I'm sure when you and the others at United Health Services start developing a long-term plan looking ahead for much of the 21st century, the next 10, 20, or 30 years, there may have been some other things. Were there some components that ultimately didn't make the final cut?
Not really. We'd like to get those shell floors completed as quickly as possible so we can have as many private rooms as possible. Our goal eventually is to have the Wilson Medical Center 100% private rooms. But this is a great first step. I am not disappointed at all in where we are. There's more work to do over the next 6 months or 7 months before we break ground. This is a bold step for our community and a bold step for UHS.
When's the anticipated completion date, when everything as part of this project would be likely completed, a realistic date?
I would say once we break ground, it's around 3.5 years after that. So we would go into the mid-20s, as it were.
United Health Services President and CEO, John Carrigg. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bob.